All right, I've been waiting to have this conversation for a long time. I've been working on this idea, Mayor, for a long time. Mayor Brandon Johnson is with us here on CHGO Bears. Thank you for making time, Mayor.
Of course.
Hogue, you start with the football. Let's go.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I think everybody who's in the city right now is pretty hyped up with this game coming up on Saturday. I'm just, from your perspective, Bears, Packers, round 3, it's a playoff game. How are you in your position feeling the Bears vibes this week?
Yeah, well, it's an exciting time for Chicago. I mean, you could not have written a better story for this particular team in this season. And so this is an opportunity for Chicago to prove its value, particularly on, against the Packers, round 1, the playoffs. So I'm definitely charged up. But as a true Chicagoan and a Bears fan, there's a part of you where you are certainly excited, but in the back of your mind, you're just thinking, how do we avoid the worst case scenario?
Yes, we've been feeling that for
Which
the
is
fans
not
all
necessarily
week.
always a loss. It's just worst case scenarios in general, how to avoid those.
Well, that's how you got to be the mayor, because you know the city well enough, because that's a thing right there. And you can't get to your position, by the way, by not being competitive. And so, I mean, you're the mayor, but this Ben Johnson, which is awful close to Brandon, he's kind of coming for his popularities as far as impact around here.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, first of all, I think you can never have too many Johnsons in charge of anything, right? So that's a good thing for Chicago, But that competitive drive, I believe, is what has carried this team. Because not to get too far into the stats, it's not like the stats necessarily match the record, right? There's some real holes that our team has, but I think it's that competitive edge that pushes them over the top. So when I was running for mayor, I was polling at 2.2% when I first announced my candidacy. And yet here I am. So you got to have that competitive drive. The data may not always line up, but if you have that drive, good things can happen.
Did somebody just say Super Bowl? I think I just heard Super Bowl. That was amazing.
You can't rule it out, right?
2-2 to mayor is that's big time.
One of the reasons it's cool having you here is we actually just launched this as a company yesterday. A new slogan, "Sports over everything," which it's not really meant to be taken completely literally, but the idea is that no matter who we are, if you're a sports fan, whatever your job is, whatever you're dealing with in your life, at some point, like, sports brings us together as a community, which is what we've been all about here at CHGO since we started. And I'm just curious what that means to you as a sports fan who also is the mayor of Chicago, one of the biggest, most important cities in the entire world, how your sports fandom maybe levels you out on certain days, or you can go to the TV, or you can go to a game or whatever and kind of get away from everything else. Just what that means to you.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations, by the way. I know you've reached an incredible milestone. Now you have a responsibility to have great information for at least 100,000 people.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. But seriously, thank you for just being a voice for people. As far as, sports being, a conduit to bringing people together, that's the beauty of sports, and particularly sports in Chicago. Look, we defend pizza, we defend our hot dogs, right? And then we defend our sports teams, right? And, it's particularly on Sundays, right? I mean, people talk about how Sunday is a segregated day, right? Because of the different houses of worship. But I think, that's shifting because the diversity on Sunday is really centered around how we come together around our sports teams. And, being the global capital of the world, you're right, we are the best freaking city in the world. That what a better way to demonstrate that diversity than coming together around our sports teams.
Yeah, I heard it put one time, like if a hot dog gets passed down a road at a sporting event, it goes from the doctor to the garbage man to whoever's touching that as it goes down. It literally could be everybody in that row, which is, I don't know, I kind of thought that was a beautiful way of putting it. So I have always been like Chicago, especially with the sports teams and specifically the stadiums. Like when the Wrigley Field thing was going on, I was like, there's no way the Cubs are leaving Wrigley Field. When Chicago Stadium was being torn down, like that was honestly, like, as far as things that have ever happened to that, at least sports-wise, that was like the worst day of my life. I loved that place to the core, and whatever, the United Center is great. But so with the Bears, I've been like tunnel vision. Keep them in Chicago. Keep them on the lakefront. Let's rewind back to when Kevin gets the job and he reaches out to you. What can you take us through what those conversations were like?
Yeah, that first conversation was exactly the way you laid it out, because that's my sentiment as well. The Chicago Bears belong in Chicago. There's no other place that is built or designed for this historic franchise, right? And I made it very clear that the city of Chicago and my time as mayor, that I would do everything in my power to ensure that they do remain in Chicago. And not to shift the subject too great, but look, we're going to build a new stadium with the international football, our soccer team, right? So I'm very much committed to making sure that we have stadiums that reflect our values. And that's what I said to Kevin. Like, look, it has to have a public benefit and a public use. There are some other elements, of course, that are still being worked through, but I'm still committed to ensuring that the Bears of the city of Chicago always remain synonymous.
Did you know at the time when you were saying this, like, look, we're going to have roadblock after roadblock, and ultimately maybe it's even unlikely how many things we have to go through? Like, you had to have known that the landscape it wasn't going to be easy.
Of course, right? I mean, I think, look, whenever you have politics involved in any instance, there's going to be challenges. I think what needs to happen now is that I believe that every single level of government, all of the entities that are involved, and of course, including the franchise and the ownership itself, that we actually have to sit at the table. And this is what I've called for, where we work through those roadblocks and challenges to make sure that the history of this city remain intact with the Bears in it.
With this new, and the Bears they came out and said it, the words Northwest Indiana.
That's a terrible idea.
Well, that's a terrible idea.
Well, tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chicago is the premier destination for so many different reasons, right? I mean, the fact that we actually have, I believe, the most dynamic, unique, prime real estate right now, where 20% of the world's fresh water is in every single view of the stadium. The fact that there was a commitment to build up fields even around the stadium to make it a 365 public use, public benefit, the impact that it will have on the museum campus, right? There are so many other economic benefits to the Bears being on the lakefront than just the Bears, right? It's the entire campus. And so, for me, there's no other place in Illinois or even in the surrounding area outside of Illinois that has the infrastructure, the grit, the character that the lakefront has. And so to me, I believe it would be a disservice to the fandom to take this historic franchise out of a prime real estate space where the number one or top destination for tourism, which is actually along that museum campus, to take it outside of the city of Chicago.
And I think we'd all agree with that. The idea of the stadium crossing state lines, it just doesn't just feel like Chicago anymore. But here's one of my questions that I don't really know the answer to. Maybe you do. If we lived in a world where Arlington Heights was sort of the middle ground and a compromise, well, at least you could say it's still Cook County. You could still say the Super Bowl's in Chicago or the Final Four or whatever, and those events could be held downtown. And, yep, the game's played out there. Does that dynamic between what the city and the Bears would be able to agree on to make those things happen, does that change if the stadium's actually being built in a different state? You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. It does. It would significantly. Quite frankly, look, the infrastructure that it takes just to have a game, I can tell you, while fans are enjoying the game, throughout the game, I'm thinking about ingress, egress, buses, people getting home, traffic control, police and fire. There are so many other mechanisms that have to be intact in order for, a successful game to take place, right? Because it's not just what's on the field, it's everything that's surrounding it. And so it would have an impact. Look, what the Bears have put forward, just based upon what we presented a couple of years ago, we're talking about the family was committed to putting 72% of their own money into the stadium, which is greater than many other stadiums that are being built around this country.
For sure.
And that the public would still own it. And they were committed to paying off the debt on the current stadium, right? And so we had found some terms in a pathway moving forward. There's a number between 72% and 100%, right, where there's been some disagreement around. There's commitment to infrastructure because wherever they go, they're going to need that. I think it's going to come down to what mechanisms can we use to ensure that the stadium in and of itself does not become the responsibility of working people, but yet we become the beneficiary of that stadium, right? Because we're talking about thousands of jobs. We're talking about, transforming that entire campus. So I still believe firmly that this is the best location for the Bears. But to your question, the synergy between the organization, the stadium, and the city of Chicago, that gets lost if they move outside of the scope of the city.
What can you share about your conversations with JB around this?
I mean, wow, you went for it, didn't you? That's a fair question, though. I mean, look, I don't want to get too wonkish, but there is something that's called ISFA, Illinois State Finance Authority, right? Where the system in of itself through ISFA only has one purpose, and that's to build stadiums. So that money cannot be used for anything else, right? Now, if the state of Illinois wanted to shift how those dollars can be appropriated to build schools or hospitals, that's a much different debate. But the design of that entire operation has been used to build stadiums, right? And so I believe that when this is the conversation that I've had with the governor and others around this, if we take a look at ISFA and how ISFA can be distributed to help build this stadium, because that's what it's designed to do, or other stadiums, that should be an open conversation. Now, there are some, other machinations to that particular revenue stream, but it's not lost on me that the only use of those dollars are to build a stadium. And so I think that there should be an open conversation around how we can use those dollars to build this stadium. Because again, the social impact is tremendous. Again, we're talking about thousands of jobs. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and upwards of, almost $2 billion of overall impact on a new stadium. And then quite frankly, our ability to be able to hold large scale events effectively in our city, it opens us up to more opportunities to do that.
So do you still believe that Kevin ultimately wants to be in Chicago if he got his way?
I mean, look, in his heart of heart, for my conversations, that's what he has shared with me. But again, there are other elements in place, right, that are beyond his control. But I don't ever believe it's too late to reset and to find a pathway forward. And maybe that's just the nature of being a Chicago Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks fan in the city of Chicago, where you always believe there's an opportunity to reset and get it done right.
So this is I don't know if you ever saw the movie Argo, but in there they had to get the hostages out of Iran, and he came up with the best bad idea, which was to set up a movie crew to go in and pull them out. So using that best bad idea, because I know it's very challenging right now, my idea is here we go. This is what we're gonna do. Because I'm worried about them leaving, and then you got to take the stadium to the ground, and there's all this money that's owed on it. It could be like $1 billion debt. So in my mind, it's like, and you can, maybe the numbers aren't quite accurate, but it'd be significant. I would love to see the city sell the land to the Bears so they can own their stadium, have them benefit in the whole stadium being there, and they own it. But then you guys, the city, taxes the Bears significantly, and you get a ton of benefits from it. They're in Chicago. You tax them. You guys figure out whatever that is. That money's always coming into the city, and you get a huge windfall by selling the land to them. Why can't we do that? That's my best bad idea to the situation.
Yeah. This episode has been brought to you by Best Bad Ideas.
Well, we do that every day. Honestly.
Well, I mean, look, you're not the first person to come up with sort of a creative option to how we can move forward. I mean, at this point, my preference, of course, is for the city to have it as an asset, right, to own it, right? I understand, what could be potentially drawn from a tax revenue based upon the way you described it, because you didn't give the numbers. You just said just tax a whole lot, right?
A lot.
All right. But
something that some whatever
that
number
measures
that
out that the selling of we benefit from. Right. So I'm just going to say this for the record. There's a lot of sensitivity in the city of Chicago around selling off public assets to private operators.
I get that.
Right. So, I think there's one of those things where it may look, profitable in the short term, but what does that mean for the life of the deal? Here's what we do agree upon, whether it's the best bad idea or not. I think the worst idea is for the Bears to be outside of the city of Chicago, and my door remains open to the Bears and the organization to keep them here, because this is where they belong.
We got to wrap, so I'll leave you. You can answer this.
Thank you.
Almost yes or no. But does this flirtation with Northwest Indiana, in your mind, maybe reopen the door a little bit more to Chicago to slide back in the picture?
Perhaps, right? Look, I've never closed the door, and I won't ever do that. Again, growing up in the 90s, it's never over until it absolutely is over. And so, as the optimist in me. Of course, as a Cubs fan, I always have to just make sure that the door stays open. But really excited about the Bears and the Packers this weekend, and my hope and expectation is that we can win a playoff game and take it to the next round, and let's see what happens after that.
Mayor, we really appreciate you coming in. It's a complete pleasure for us, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Congratulations, you all.
Best of luck. That bad idea. It's
All right, see me after the show.
Okay. All right. Mayor Brandon Johnson, thank you so much.